On behalf of the Hartford Conservation Commission, we want to welcome everyone tonight. My name's Tom Cale. I'm chair of the commission. We have quite a few members here. Chris Beetham is on the commission. Mike Harris. Lee Michaelitis is a de facto member. Katie Mann is around someplace. I guess I got them all. Before we get started, we want to thank a few thanks. First, we want to thank the Bugby Center for letting us use this space. We want to thank Junction Arts and Media, who are going to record it so that we can put it on YouTube, so it'll be accessible to anyone. The Upper Valley Co-op, they provided some of the refreshments. Particularly want to thank the 10 organizations that agreed to come, and they all showed up tonight. And their displays are around the table, around the room here. So the object, one of the primary objects is to talk with them on items that you're interested in. And the final thank you is to you guys for showing up. We really appreciate it. The purpose of this event is to give a broad overview of the really wide diversity of environmental activities and stewardship opportunities that we have in Hartford and the Upper Valley. You're going to see a really broad range. And so the intent is that, maybe you learn something about an organization that you didn't know anything about, and you participate, and in that way, you'll be able to help the environment, help the community, and hopefully have fun doing it. So the format tonight is pretty straightforward. We have 11 organizations, and each of them are going to come up for 5 minutes and talk, just give a broad overview, and then no question and answers, but at the end of the hour, we have refreshments in the back, and then you can go around and talk with any of the organizations, find out specific details of anything that interests you. So that's it. I guess with that, we'll start with the tree board. Jeff Arnold of the tree board.
Thanks. Thanks, Tom. I'm kind of stuck with a slideshow, but so anyway, the tree board has a 7-member board. It officially was formed in 2003, but in 2001 it was called Trees Matter, and this was our logo at that time. Jody Turner made this. This is the new faded version, and they're on sale over here. So we have a. Excuse me. We have an Arbor Day sale as one of our activities where we have a nursery out at Maxfield, and we buy rootstock from Red Start Forestry, and we get the rootstock, put them in our nursery, grow them out through the summer, and sell them the next Arbor Day, which is the first weekend. I better start showing these slides. You can just start. Last year we got a grant for $6,500 to sort of open up the area because Scott Hauser at the rec center wanted to be able to see the river better at the town hall, and there was a lot of knotweed that we had to get rid of. And next slide. And so we went to Ottaquechee River. Next slide, and we cut. So the previous slides, we cut some I don't have much time. Cottonwood stakes, and you can just shove them into the ground. And as you saw in the last one, they actually leafed out. But then when we had that hard frost on the 17th of May, it basically killed them all. And then it was followed by a drought, and basically we lost all 50 of them. So we also had some trees left over, some willows, some cottonwoods, and silver maples that we planted at one end where these knotweed were. This is right next to the bridge, the Main Street Bridge. Next slide. And so we were unable to control the knotweed, as you can see. We kept cutting it throughout the summer, and nothing worked. And another part of the project was This is one of our members' wives. She was enjoying the day. We were taking down and getting rid of the invasives, and we had indigenous shrubs that we were growing at at a nursery. How many minutes? 3. So part of the project was getting out the buckthorn, the barberry, and multiflora rose, and then, but we had a big problem because there was poison ivy in here, and so we had to actually cut down the area because there was so much poison ivy, and so a couple of us removed it in a couple 100-foot long area, and gave up on the rest of it. Next slide. So this is just pulling some of the shrub, like this is a buckthorn. Next slide. And this is the way it looked afterwards. Before, you couldn't even see the river. It was just cluttered with the underbrush. We left the box elders. Next slide. And this was our hardworking group. You see, it was a collaboration. You see Tom over there and Lee. Next slide. And we also, a lot of the elms have been dying around town, even though they're hybrid elms. They've been dying, and these ones died over by the co-op. And so we replaced them. That's a plane tree, a London plane tree. And then there was a swamp oak, and then we put a katsura on the other side. Next. So we got so fed up with the Japanese knotweed because even though we cut it time over and time, it came back like grass almost. It was amazing. It was really interesting. So we decided we got 3,000 square feet of 10 millimeter thick plastic, and we covered up the whole area. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. This is our nursery, and this is where you see the truck there. This is where we took the indigenous shrubs out. We had grown them out. Before that, when we started them, they were just a simple, like a stick. And you see how healthy they look. Next slide. And so this was the process of planting all these in that area to replace the buckthorn. Next slide. So we planted 40 plants, 40 indigenous shrubs, arrowwood, nannyberry, and serviceberry in that area. Next slide. That's Claire. She's coming up next, talking about the... next slide. And this is one of the earliest trees we planted, a ginkgo, at the town hall. We planted it in 2001. Next slide. And this maple, we planted it at the Wilder Library in 2010 or something like that. Next slide. And this is a lumber pine right in front of the Wilder Data Man. And that was like 11. We try to plant a couple trees every year. This coming year, this is a sycamore. This is at Watson Park. Next slide. Their very first, when they started Trees Matter, these honey locusts in downtown Hartford was their first project. So that goes back to around 2002. Next slide.
That's the last one.
Okay. Why don't you come and talk to me after, because I think I've run out of time. If you have any questions.
So our next speaker is Claire Forseth from the Hartford Garden Friends, and I need to apologize to them. A lot of our advertisements said Hartford Garden Club, so sorry about that.
That's fine, that's fine. If you were paying close attention to the slides, you might have seen some of our gardens and pots. So I noticed them because I know where they are. But you should be able to see them around town if you have not already. If you just look in the back there, there's where our table is, there's a Hartford Garden Friends oval stake that sign that we put in our gardens, so you'll know which gardens are ours. And we have some that we have adopted, not officially Garden Friends. The Hartford Garden Friends, I'll read it, was formed in the summer of 1991 with the purpose of stimulating knowledge and the love of gardening, participating in civic beautification, and promoting conservation and friendship. Today, the group of volunteers cares for 20-plus gardens and pots around towns, the different villages. We put lovely flowers that add bright, colorful spots around the community. For the first 30 years, the focus was on planting flowers and shrubs that are suited to our climate zone and provide color throughout the growing season. This year, and moving forward, Hartford Garden Friends plans to try to transition to incorporating more native flowers and shrubs and pollinators into our gardens where appropriate. On September 21st, the Hartford Garden Friends hosted a well-attended public talk, Native Gardens, Beauty, and Nature at Home, by Alicia Hauk. She shared information about why it's important to include native plants and pollinators in our gardens. We hope to incorporate her ideas in our future plantings. We're funded by private donations from individuals and businesses. We are not part of a town organization. So please consider a contribution to the Hartford Garden Friends to ensure our colorful gardens continue to be funded. The Friends always are looking for people to join our group, especially younger people. Our activities include preparing the soil for planting, selecting and planting the flowers, the shrubs, if that's appropriate, watering, weeding, deadheading, and preparing the garden for the winter. Whether you know nothing about growing flowers or you can name every kind, we welcome everyone. Some members share one garden, and others are the single caretaker and designer of their plot. Come and get your hands dirty. We also welcome help with special short-term projects such as digging up some of the old shrubs and planting new ones. If this time commitment fits your schedule, add your name to our list at our table. We think our town looks better with flowers. If you agree, maybe you can become part of the solution of mitigating the negative effects of climate change and providing places for birds, butterflies, and insects to thrive in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Clara. So our next speaker is Ben Fletcher, and it's a little change. We going from plants to, well, I guess plants too. You actually do, I guess you also do plants.
We're talking about plants.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Tom. Testing. I think I can project.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Ben with the salamander team, and the team has existed since 2020, so this is our third or fourth year. And as of last night, we essentially have to rethink everything because frogs and salamanders migrated last night at the end of February. And so I'm an emotional wreck right now, but there were two main culprits last night, and one we're still waiting for in town. Luckily, I saw no yellow spotted salamanders moving, but there was one species of salamander that was reported up in Maine, and Maine is north, so using transitive properties. Yeah, so up until this year, I've been telling everybody that the migration season begins in April, basically April Fool's Day. So yesterday was the punchline for a long-awaited joke, I guess. But anyway, on a brighter note, the salamander team meets every last Sunday of the month for an educational nature walk. And every month we go to a different location. And most of the time, I don't know the location we're going to, so I selfishly use it to just explore the area. Yeah, and each month we have an expert guide. Sometimes the expert is a passionate amateur. Sometimes it's like a 40-year-old or a 40-year experienced public school teacher, rather. Yeah. I've not led one yet. If I was to do that, it would be on fungi. And every July we do fungi walks because that's my cup of tea. Yeah. So even last Sunday we had a walk at Greensboro Ridge in Hanover. And I think we have a soil scientist lined up for this month, if you want to get dirty. Yeah, so in town, well, we actually contribute to a project up in Montpelier. It's called the Amphibian Road Crossing Project, led by the North Branch Nature Center. And yeah, they basically only work in Montpelier, so the whole effort with this Hartford Salamander team was to kind of convince them to move south. And at this point, Hartford, Heartland, Hanover, Thetford, and a growing list of towns are getting involved and kind of starting their own salamander teams. And the migration season is longer now than it was last year and the year before, and the team email list has like 350 people at this point, so we're growing. But every town needs its own team, and the need is increasingly critical each year. So that said, no matter what town you live in, we're going to host a training for amphibian volunteers at the end of March. It's going to be at the start of February from now on, but yeah, so all planning will be reconsidered for next year. However, look forward to that training, and everybody's invited. It's remote, so we can fit infinite people. And we have reflective vests posted in the Hartford Library, and we're trying to expand to more libraries. And there's a list of required equipment, so if you have any links to your local library, and if you have like a backstock of headlamps or safety vests or buckets or basically those things. We're trying to stock our local libraries with kind of community science kits. Thank you. And yeah, we have 20 reflective vests in the Hartford libraries currently. So if you have any connections to vests, please contact hartfordsalamanderteam@gmail.com. I'll leave it there.
If you just Google Hartford Salamander Team, you can get into their website. It's pretty dynamic. It's pretty very informative website.
hartfordsalamanderteam.org.
Okay. We're going to make a little switch here. We have the Hartford Climate Action Committee. John, you're going to be, okay. And Dana, you're doing the energy one, or? Together. Oh, it's a tag team, okay.
This is, Dana's in charge of audio-visual. Hi, I'm from the Hartford Climate Action Steering Committee. And as I hope all of you know, in 2001, the Select Board approved a lengthy and in detailed climate action plan. And right after it was approved, there was formed this steering team to oversee the implementation of the plan. And that's what we do. We meet once a month, and we get into various subjects. And Dana Clausen, the town's environmental sustainability coordinator, is going to take you through a slideshow that indicates exactly what we do. Thanks, Dana.
Dan, if you want to go to the next slide. So, you know, as the gentleman before me was just talking about the salamanders leaving early, we're all just probably starting to see the impacts of climate change in a very real way. So there's really two things that we're looking at, which is adaptation and mitigation. There's some stuff we're just not going to change. You know, Vermont's experienced a 20% increase in precipitation since 1900. That's impacting us in a lot of ways. On a municipal scale, that means our wastewater is processing more water. I'm sure most of you are dealing with issues of erosion, or at least know people that are. So it's becoming very real to us. We've got an extended growing season going on now because it's getting warmer and earlier and staying warmer later. You know, a lot of us this year are going to see that when it gets warmer and then we have these cold freezes, that's going to probably wreak havoc with a lot of our vegetation because things are going to start to bloom. Freeze is going to come back. It's going to end it. So the impacts of climate change are getting very, very real to us. And then there's some comical examples, but things of, you know, we don't know everything's going to happen. We've got home runs going longer because of the more warm, moist air. And so I guess with these slides, I'm just trying to say, you know, there's some stuff that's just going to come at us out of left field. But, you know, there's some very real stuff, like the number of critically hot days of 87 degrees and above are increasing. So, you know, I personally do a lot of talking with folks at like the Bugbee Center about how do we make people aware on those hot days so that we can mitigate any kind of health impacts. You know, my kids go to the summer parks here where it gets really hot in the WABA, the ice rink. You know, how do we start teaching kids to watch their own signs for dehydration? Just wide range of things like that. If we go to the next slide. And then on the other part of it is trying to track the town's climate impacts, you know, mitigate where our emissions are going. So this is from a UNH study that I did about a year and a half ago on the town's greenhouse gas emissions and trying to look at where are emissions happening and how do we lower them. One of the most surprising things here is that the majority of our emissions actually come from our wastewater, so just the processing of water. So there's some things like that we're not going to be able to address easily because that's just kind of the microbial process of how the anaerobic digestion from the wastewater stuff just goes in the air. So what we've been focused on really is our buildings and our vehicles. We have a lot of state programs, grants going on right now, and kind of CAST helps me kind of think about how do we apply these funds to the town, you know, and kind of keep me honest about what are we really doing to lower our emissions. Matt, if you want to go to the next slide. If you want to get involved with CAST, there's a number of ways. This fall, late fall, one of the things we're going to be doing is working with the Nature Conservancy to do a community resiliency program where the Nature Conservancy is going to come in and help us assess our vulnerabilities and weaknesses in the face of climate change. That'll culminate in a one-day event sometime probably in mid-November. It'd be great if a lot of you folks came to that. We're really going to spend half a day doing like a SWOT analysis, small groups, figuring out what our threats are, what our strengths are. And then that's actually going to be a springboard into the town's vulnerability. Hazard mitigation plan. Thank you, Lynn. Like I said, a lot of the folks in these groups help keep me honest. And when I forget stuff. You know, one of the things we've been looking at in CAST is to help the various committees and commissions align their goals with the climate action plan. Because, you know, climate action or climate change is going to impact us on a wide swath of things. Regardless of what your group is, there's probably some impact. And we'd be happy to have you guys come to a meeting. We'd be happy to talk to you about what we know in relation to climate in your organization. And then you can attend a CAST meeting. They happen the third Wednesday of every month. They're virtual and in person. And again, we'd be happy to have you there. And I'm going to stay up here because we're going into the Energy Commission. Sorry, Tom, if you want to do the formal introduction.
That's okay.
Okay.
That's okay, just keep going.
All right, just keep going. So I'm going to introduce the, yes, Jen?
How would one find the virtual link to the CAST meeting?
Oh, that's a good question. So we currently are a subcommittee of the Energy, the CAST is currently a subcommittee under the website of the Energy Commission. So every month I post that agenda for the Climate Action Steering Team under the Energy Commission's website. I just talked to IT today. We are going to break that out into a separate website, but you can find us online. Of course, the notice is always posted here as part of open meeting law and at the various libraries, or you can reach out to me directly. All right. Now we'll do heck.
I'm not trying to steal your thunder, Dana, but I'll introduce myself. So my name is Jesse Pollard. I currently chair the Hartford Energy Commission. We are largely responsible for supporting the select board and, again, adopting the climate action plan, as well as, I believe, if I remember correctly, there was a voter ballot measure in 2021 calling for carbon reductions associated with the town's municipal operations. And that includes buildings, the ice skating rink. For technical purposes, I think it excludes the school. But yeah, so what we were trying to do is, or what Dana has largely been focused on most of the last couple of years, is our buildings, what are those buildings' carbon output, and how do we address or minimize our carbon footprint through federal and state funding opportunities. And Dana, I'm sure if we had the whole deck from your select board presentation about a month ago, we'd be going down the list of things that Dana's been working on and that the Energy Commission and CAST has been supporting. A big, well, taking a step back, looking at our community's carbon emissions, there are any number of things we can focus on. We can focus on municipal operations, we can focus on transportation, heating, electricity consumption, and even just more socially minded things like accessibility, walkability, transit, right? And so the Energy Commission, I know the Planning Commission's been working on the housing chapter update and rewriting that, so we lent a supportive role in that process. I know economic development, the town's economic development chapter is being rewritten right now, and I expect to participate mildly in that as well. I would say, looking forward, not a passion project of mine, but an area of concern I have is, for the most part, New England's grid in the summertime is fairly clean. We have hydropower, we have wind, we have solar. How are we affordably going to heat our homes in our communities 5-10 years from now, right? We do not have a natural gas utility here. And so what I've been spending a lot of my time working on, and that we're looking forward, is how do we make geothermal heating more accessible to residences and commercial operations, whether that's redevelopment or new buildings. And so I think we are looking forward. There's a bill in the legislature, speech 1, take 3, right now, essentially pushing for providing a little bit of regulatory structure for these thermal energy networks. And the town of Hartford is one of the first communities getting as far in as we have and examining exactly how can we take the waste heat from, say, our wastewater treatment facility, which we just hit on is a pretty significant contributor to our carbon footprint. How do we capture that waste heat, and how do we redirect it or combine it with something like waste heat from existing commercial operations? The ice hockey rink, which I don't know if you've taken a walk behind the ice hockey rink anytime in the last 2 months, but it just spits heat out, right? How can we take that, as wasteful as it is, and combine it with an agricultural practice, heating a commercial building, the school right next door? What are the school's energy bills looking like around now? And then additionally, geothermal. The state courthouse is running a feasibility study on how cost-effective, technically and commercially, would it be to pull heat from the Earth's subsurface to heat the redevelopment project proposed for the courthouse. I think I successfully just inserted myself in your presentation.
Okay. So
Do you have anything else?
No, I only have 30 seconds to go through this stuff. Next slide. So just a real quick overview of some of the stuff we've done here in the last year. We've brought in a couple different job training programs, invited them to come to town. One was Vermont Works for Women, which is a 7-week training program for women. We're penciled in to run another one of those in June, July of 2025. So if anybody's interested in that, please come see me. We brought in a heat pump training, which was a 2-week training to teach people how to install heat pumps. We have different events, things of that nature. And then my time is up, so Matt, if you just want to go to the next slide, I just want to let everybody know if you're interested in attending one of our meetings are every fourth Thursday of the month at 5 o'clock. Another thing about CAST in the Energy Commission, you don't have to become a full-fledged member to play with us. You're always welcome to join our meetings, participate in a project. If there's just one thing that you're interested in working with us on and you don't like us, just come work on that one thing. It's fine. We have plenty to do. But please reach out. I'm sure there's a lot of crossover between all of our organizations.
Come over and talk to us afterwards.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, yes. Our next speaker is Earl Hatley with Hartford, Resilient Hartford.
Quiet, everyone. I'm Earl Hatley. I'm an enrolled member of the Abenaki Nation of Missisquoi. I'm a member of Resilient Hartford Commission, appointed by the Select Board. Matt Osborne is our chair of our commission. And I've been involved with this project since 2021. And been on the commission since 2022, a really long time now. And waiting for the slides to appear. But one of the key projects that we're working on is a food forest in Clifford Park. And if you can go to the next slide. Yeah, there we go. So Clifford Park is a park on the edge of the White River. Just across the river from West Hartford. So you see the red square down at the bottom, which is the south end of the park. At the north end, just above it there is a bridge crossing over, and that's West Hartford across the river. And on the left, which would be on the west side of the park, is a residential area. And so this park is utilized by folks living in West Hartford and in that residential area. Inside the square on the left is a tennis court. Most of the activity happens on the north end. There's a ball diamond and swing set and a lot of things there, and an access down to the river from up there on the north end. And so down at the south end by the tennis court is where our activity is happening. And there we're building out, planting trees and building a food forest. And we had begun an Abenaki garden there, but I'll show you why we're changing course. This is what it looked like when we started in 2021. And you can see bare ground through the little bit of grass that's there. It was mowed tight to the ground quite frequently up to that point in time, short grass. And the clippings were captured as they mowed, but a lot of bare ground that you could see there in the area. And this wasn't being utilized in that end of the park. You can see a fence at the far end there. On the other side of the fence was a horseshoe pitching area, which was not being used at all any longer. Next slide. So this is what we designed for that area of the park. The square on the right with the legend represents the tennis court. The location of the tennis court. And so this is what we're building out between there and the tree line. On the other side of the tree line on the left is the river. So that's the riparian area of the river there. And this is what we propose to build out. The line going across the top, which represents the south end of the park. That's the fence line. On the other side of the fence line was the horseshoe pitch. So inside of there is the original food forest design, which Karen Gainey, our contractor, designed for us. So in there, we proposed a variety of trees, hawthorn, butternut, chestnuts, and peach trees, hazelnuts, plum, and pear trees. And around those trees, guilds that we wanted to plant, like blueberry and currants and elderberry, serviceberries, and spice bush and herbs that would go around the trees like guilds. If you want to go back up a slide there, Matt. Well, you've come down quite a few. But at any rate, this was when we first started the first trees. in September of 2021. And there's Karen leading the first work day. And then the next slide was when we started planting these guild bushes around the trees. And the next slide. We decided after that in 2022 that on the other side of that fence in the horseshoe pitch area to convert that into a traditional Abenaki garden, a Three Sisters garden. Next slide. But we have a problem. This whole area is a floodplain, and so we can't bring topsoil, we can't bring mulch, and the soil is really bad because of the flood, and so we're building it with cover crops. So this is the cover cropping, and we're doing cover cropping there. Next slide. And this is what it looks like after the planting. Next slide. And next slide. This is our problem. It flooded last summer and wiped out much of our work. This is the, whoops, sorry. This is the garden. And so now we've had to back up and rethink the whole thing and keep going, Matt, because we're out of time. On down. So this is the new plan. We're going to turn the food forest into a food forest riparian area, and we're going to beef up the riparian area, and we're going to make an area by the fence where we can put in plants that that we can grow out and utilize elsewhere, and beef up the riparian areas. I'm working with other Abenaki folks, and we're identifying food plants that are also good riparian plants. And so the food forest will be a riparian food forest to protect the riparian area, build out the riparian area to protect the park, but also continue with the food forest concept so that folks can go in there and utilize the park, but also gather food, while at the same time protecting the park and the flooding with a better protective riparian area for the park. Wiliveni, thank you.
Thank you, Earl. So now we're going to go a little bit beyond just the town of Hartford. And our next speaker is Jim Armbruster from the Vermont Institute of Natural Science.
Cool, thank you. My name is Jim. I'm the lead biologist at the Vermont Institute of Natural Science, or VINS for short. And I always like to start off by asking, how many people have actually been to VINS before? That's like everybody. Who's never been to VINS before? Okay, yeah. Who's not paying attention? Yeah, I usually get somebody. So we are a nonprofit nature center founded in 1972, just down the road in Quechee. We were founded by a group of people who were concerned with the health of the Ottaquechee River. In the 70s, towns were actually dumping raw sewage into the water. And this group of people realized that's really nasty. We need to do something about that. And there's a disconnect. Why are people doing stuff like this? Why are we polluting our waterways? And so they actually sued the town of Woodstock. They won. They cleaned up the river, and they started focusing on education, teaching people about the environment. And since then, our mission has been to motivate people to care about the environment. And we still do that today through our education, through our research, and avian wildlife rehabilitation. Education, you've all been involved, it seems like. You've been to the Nature Center, you've seen our programming, usually involving live birds. I didn't bring a live bird tonight, I'm sorry, you're stuck with just me. But we use those birds in programs. We go on the road to schools and libraries and different events so people can learn about nature from a live actual ambassador bird, which is pretty neat. We're also in schools, enhancing STEM technology and those kind of programs with our educators. The avian wildlife rehabilitation is a fancy way of saying we have a bird hospital on our campus. We used to say it would see between 300 and 500 birds a year. The last 4 years now, we've seen over 1,000 birds. So we are seeing a marked increase in birds being brought to our facility. We're not sure if it's because more people know about us or there's just more birds getting injured. It's kind of unclear why we're seeing such a dramatic increase in birds to us. We have about a 40% success rate coming to release those birds, which is actually a pretty good number. and really proud of the work that they do in that department. What I focus on, though, is our research, which involves community science and different collaborations with different organizations looking to use our expertise, usually working with raptors, to study and help the actual wild populations in our state. And so one of our big projects that we're working on right now is we're actually trapping raptors up in Addison County. It was started as a collaboration with a couple of different organizations looking at red-tailed hawks and rough-legged hawks, and now we're continuing to keep an eye on those populations for things like, lead in their blood and parasites and things like that, even potentially bird flu. So we're trying to keep an eye on our local populations. We're not concerned with red-tailed hawks necessarily, but they're a good indicator of other species that might be at risk to any number of things that are happening out in the environment. We're transitioning into our spring and summer programming and projects. One of our big projects this year is a continuation of a project from last year with folks from Hawk Mountain. We're looking at broadwing hawks. Actually, the VINS logo is a broadwing hawk. It's a silhouette of a broadwing, so it's one of our species we really enjoy. We're actually helping those researchers find local birds and putting GPS trackers on those birds to follow them on their migration. As people probably know, those birds actually are complete migrants. They all leave Vermont in the winter. They go down to Central America, and we're actually tracking some of those local Vermont birds. We actually got a transmitter on a bird last year that's down in Central America right now. So she had a successful migration from Tassville all the way down thousands of miles. So this season, we're looking to put more units out. So we're looking for landowners that might have seen broadwing hawks in their property, that might know where a nest location is or a really good hot spot where these birds are hanging out. We'll go in and we'll survey. We're looking for folks to help survey if they're able to find these nests. It's not easy, as you can imagine. They're a small forest-dwelling hawk. They like to nest in the woods away from people, and it can take a lot to find them. But we're hoping to find those nests, trap those adult birds off that nest, and put GPS units, usually on the females, because they're bigger. They can carry the weight of a GPS unit. So we're really looking for folks that know where broadwings are or want to help survey. Another species we're working with is the American kestrel. American kestrels are actually experiencing declines across their range, including in Vermont. So there are species that we're concerned about. We're looking to put up nest boxes. That's not the solution to why they're declining, but it helps us gauge where their populations are, and we can keep an eye on them and band them and actually get blood and other measurements to see the health of the population. So we're looking for landowners with potential habitat to put up a box, and potentially survey those boxes and monitor them for us. So I've got an example of a kestrel box in the back over there. It's pretty easy to build. If you've got property, you want to build it yourself, you're more than welcome to do that as well. And just let us know where those boxes are. And actually, a shameless plug, on Sunday, I'll be doing a whole presentation in Norwich about kestrels and their decline. So if you're really interested in kestrels and want to learn more, feel free to stop by the Norwich Library. So I think I saw a minute, so thanks.
Thank you, Jim. Our next speaker, we're continuing with this sort of broad scientific approach, is Jason Hill from the Vermont Center for Eco Studies.
Thanks, Tom. Thank you, folks. Thank you for being here tonight. I just want to highlight a couple of the opportunities that we at the Vermont Center for Eco Studies have for folks to be involved in science. We use community science as a tool in our research, not only because it broadens the distribution, the geographic scope that we can get out and sample and collect data from, but also because it's a great way to introduce people to the scientific research process. My PhD is in ornithology, so I band a lot of birds, put tracking devices on birds like Jim was just talking about. And I have some projects where people are involved in tracking the population status of some of those species that we put tracking tags on. It's a great way for school groups, for community groups, for just enthusiastic individuals to get directly involved, contribute data directly to science. It's like taking the things you're already passionate about and just doing those same things, but doing it in a way that your data is maximized to benefit scientists' understanding about the thing you're interested in, whether it's salamanders or grassland birds. So, you can go to the next slide, Matt. Next. Yeah, so I just want to tell you one success story about using community scientists. 30 years ago, you might know that we basically had lost loons in the state due to a number of reasons, all of them related to people and how we affect the environment. And through 30 years of combined efforts with VINS and Vermont Center for Eco Studies and our loon biologist, Eric Hansen, of organizing community scientists to go out, systematically survey in July for the presence of loons, record their behavior, document their breeding, teaching community members to talk to lake associations, anglers, people on the landscape to stay away from loon nests, how to be safe and to fish and recreate around loons. 30 years of that. Oh, sorry, Matt, go ahead. Of teaching people to do that around the state. It's a concerted effort to involve people with their neighbors and their neighborhoods in conserving loons. And next slide, Matt. And now Vermont is essentially at carrying capacity for loons. We have about as many loons as we can actually support. That's a tremendous success story, driven a large part by the community efforts of people just like yourselves, of going out and collecting data in a systematic way so that scientists like myself can understand where populations of loons are most affected by people and where we have an opportunity to intervene in conservation. So, if loons aren't your thing, or you're not near a loon and you're not able to help participate in the Loon Watch in July every year, I organize a number of other community science projects, and so do my colleagues at the Vermont Center for Eco-Studies, where if you're a birder, and you don't have to be an expert birder, but you can just be someone that's enthusiastic about birds, you can go out and collect birds, data on birds at specific locations around northern New England and eastern New York, contribute those data back to us, and we use those data in our scientific publications, but to also inform state and federal agencies about the health of those bird populations. I organize community scientists to monitor bird populations in the spruce fir zone at the top of mountains where there are no roads, and there's no other monitoring program that is able to monitor those breeding bird populations like Bicknell's thrush and black-polled warblers. So it's folks like you that do a lot of that monitoring, allow me to tell the states and the feds how those species are doing. So if birds aren't your thing, but you like things that fly, we are engaged in Vermont's second breeding bird atlas. We're pretty lucky in terms of states for having as many atlasing efforts as we do. We are hosting the second butterfly atlas for Vermont. That's like 20-some years after the first atlas. Most states don't even have a first butterfly atlas, and we're on our second. It allows us to look back in time and see where we were 20 years ago and where we are now, both in which new species are present, which species we've lost, and how individual species are doing. If you're interested in participating, you do not need to be an expert. You come see me afterwards, you can have a smartphone, and you can meaningfully contribute data that helps us understand about butterflies in the state of Vermont this summer. Same with vernal pool monitoring. I'll just say briefly, you don't have to be enthusiastic as Alex, but if you have a vernal pool on your property, you're interested in monitoring, like this would be a great year to do that, we'll give you automatic recording equipment that's programmed to record amphibian calls at certain times of the day. You can check the water temperature and water depth, contribute that, and that's how we understand how climate change is in fact impacting amphibian populations in the state. And lastly, I'll just say I also run a tick research project. And this project came about because community members came to me and said, I see all these signs for people that are spraying their yards for ticks with chemicals. Is that effective? Is there scientific evidence to demonstrate that's an effective way to control ticks? And if it does it also negatively impact insect populations? So I started that project out of community interest in coming to the answer to that question. If you're interested in that, please contact me afterwards. And if you have a property here in Hartford, you'd like me to come survey and take ticks off your property for you for free, whether you spray your property or not, please come talk to me, and happy to have you join us. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. So we're going to switch now. We're going to go more into land and then water conservation. And the Upper Valley Land Trust, Casey Bernick is our next speaker. Upper Valley UVLT is not not just a Hartford organization, but many of you are probably familiar with Act 59 that was passed last summer in Vermont, and so aim of that is to conserve 30% of Vermont's land by 2030 and 50% by 2050. So land conservation is going to become increasingly important in the state of Vermont. So, Cassie?
Thanks. Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Cassie Bernick. I am UVLT's Stewardship Programs Coordinator. So I work in our Stewardship department. So we focus on the long-term management and monitoring of our conservation easements, as well as our fee-owned lands as well. Next slide. Thank you. So this is our mission statement. I'm just going to read it word for word for those of you who may not be able to read it. The Upper Valley Land Trust helps people conserve land. UVLT provides conservation leadership, tools, expertise to permanently conserve the working farms, forested ridges, wildlife habitat, water resources, trails, and scenic lands that are key to the health and sustainability of the Upper Valley. So it's a little bit of a lot that we do. Our conservation team helps local landowners throughout the Upper Valley to conserve their land. And then, like I said before, I'm on the stewardship team, so we focus on the annual monitoring of those easements. Next slide. Thank you. This is our service region, so just in case. So you can see the whole, our whole service area of the Upper Valley. So we go as north as Reigate and then as south as Charlestown, New Hampshire. And I put a star where Hartford is. So we basically have conservation easements in 45 of these towns. Next slide. Thank you. So we were formed in 1985. So since then, we have accumulated over 510 conservation easements. And then on top of that, we have 36 conservation areas. So those are the lands that we own. One nearby here is up in Norwich, our Brookmead Conservation Area. In total, I think this number is actually larger now, over 55,000 acres of land that we have been able to conserve. We have 55 conserved trails that we also help manage, and 8 Connecticut River campsites. So along the Connecticut River and along the Connecticut River Paddlers Trail, we have 8 primitive campsites that are helped manage through our volunteer program, which I'll talk about in a second. And then also since 2019, we've been able to grow and donate over 7,000 pounds of fresh vegetables to our neighbors in the Upper Valley. Next slide. So now I'm going to talk briefly about how you can get involved, specifically in our volunteer program. Thank you. So one of the ways is through becoming one of our garden volunteers. We have 2 food pantry gardens. One is up in Norwich at our Brookmead Conservation Area, and our second one is down in Charlestown on our Up on the Hill Conservation Area. So at both of these gardens, we run on grants and our volunteers. We plant and we harvest all the vegetables there, and we donate everything. Up in Norwich, we donate everything to Willing Hands, which you may be familiar with. And then down in Charlestown, we work in partnership with the Claremont Soup Kitchen and donate our food there. Last season, 2023, we were able to harvest just under a ton of food. So it's just myself and our small group of volunteers that work at the gardens, so we're always welcoming new volunteers. Thank you. So our campsite volunteers, like I mentioned before, we have 8 campsites along the river. Our volunteers help us open up the campsite and keep it maintained throughout the season. The season is usually May through October. So it's, light maintenance, keeping the weeds at bay, maybe helping fix a picnic table. So we do have an opening at our campsite down in Claremont that we're in need of a volunteer. So if you're interested in that, if you like paddling, you could talk to me about that afterwards. Thanks. We also have trail and conservation area volunteers. So our volunteers help us maintain and keep an eye on our 36 conservation areas, along with the 55 conserved trails that we have. So just light trail maintenance, moving limbs out of the way, clearing water bars, pruning, and some larger trail projects that we that we work on with groups. This summer, if you're familiar with our Zebedee Wetland Conservation Area, we will be replacing all of the bog bridges. Oh, sorry, is that it? So if you're interested in that, I could tell you more about that. Really quick, our easement monitors help us monitor our over 510 conservation easements. And every year we host a training. So if you're interested in becoming an easement monitor, we are hosting a training I guess it's basically March. March 13th, we'll be having a Zoom training, so that's kind of all the classroom stuff. We'll explain what an easement is, how you can help monitor it. And then the second part is on Saturday, March 16th, which is the in-person training. We'll go out together and we'll walk on a property and kind of show you how to conduct a monitoring visit. I'm happy to talk to you about it more at the table afterwards. Thank you.
Continuing on that sort of theme of the environment, we'll have Christian Pelletier from the White River Partnership.
Thank you. Hi everyone, my name's Christian and I work for the White River Partnership as our program coordinator, and we also have Dan Rudell, our watershed scientist here tonight, and Greg Russ, our watershed restoration manager. So a nice little team from the partnership here today. So it was awesome. A lot of people showed some pictures of the White River, so that kind of teed it up for me being last, but obviously the White River runs through here and is a major part of this community. So today I just want to talk about some of the work that we're up to and some ways that you guys can all get involved. So you can go to the next slide, please. So our mission, it's in our name, we're a partnership, so our mission is to bring folks together to protect the White River. And we have a vision that through that partnership and collective action that we're going to improve the long-term health of the White River, improve water quality, improve habitat, improve flood resiliency, and create better recreation opportunities. Go to the next slide, please. So just really quickly, we do a ton of great things, but I just wanted to show some pictures and highlight some of the high-level stuff we do. We collect water samples, including samples that we collect here in Hartford. We plant trees. We steward river access spots, which included, removing flood debris when we have flood events like we did last year. Go to the next slide. We remove a lot of trash from the river. We collect water bugs and run education programs with students. We snorkel in the river with students, which is an awesome program that we have every year that hundreds of local kids around the watershed get to visit and see the White River up close and see what's underneath it. Next slide. And then we do some bigger projects, bigger restoration projects, things like taking down dams or replacing culverts or floodplain restoration. So we have a whole different suite of tools that we use to help improve and protect the White River. So now I just want to go over how you can get involved, and just a quick thing, this presentation has a bunch of hyperlinks that are really easy for if anyone's interested after this presentation in getting involved. This would be a great resource to click through and take you directly to how to get involved. So if you are interested, we have an email sign up and I can shoot this presentation to you, and it can be a quick guide on how to get involved with everything. Next. So now I'm just going to quickly preview some of those ways you can get involved. If any of these things interest you, then please talk to us. So we have our Swim Smart program every summer, May through September. We monitor 22 swimming holes, including some in Hartford, for E. coli. And we use volunteers to collect these samples, and then we post the results the next day. So it's a great opportunity. We're really hoping folks engage with this data and check it and spread it to others so they can be aware if it's safe to swim in the White River. Currently, we don't have any open water quality monitoring volunteer spots, but if we do, that is something we'll advertise. But it's a great way to just get involved by reading our water quality report and knowing where to find these results so you can swim smart in the White River. Next slide. A big thing, and this is maybe the easiest way to get involved, is to report trash. Unfortunately, there's a lot of trash dumps in the area, and particularly we have a lot of tires in the river, and we can't tackle everything or know where everything is, but we've been using folks in the community to report trash to us, and we have a link here where you can go online and report the location of trash to us at the White River Partnership, and then when we have volunteers and big teams, we have a list of places where you can go tackle some of those trash. We also have one-off volunteer events, and here's another link if you're interested in this, where we post all our monthly volunteer events. So we're always looking for volunteers to tackle things like those big trash dumps that people report. Next one. A big one, we have an event called Green Up the White that kind of leverages Green Up Day to get folks out to not just clean up their road, but visit river access sites on Green Up Day. And so on May 4th, your Green Up Day, we post all our river access sites that need someone to go spruce it up. And it's kind of the kickoff to our recreation season. And we'd love if folks got involved here and picked a river access spot and visited that site as well on Green Up Day. We also have a water trail stewardship program, which allows a volunteer to adopt a river access site. And through that, they visit it once a month through our summer months into early fall, and they collect trash and report hazards to us. So that's a great way if you want to get involved, that you can do that on a more regular basis. And those sites are our White River Water Trail, which I just wanted to quickly plug. We have over 40 sites that we consider our White River Water Trail that allows folks to recreate along the White River. And this is just a map of our water trail sites. We have links on where you can find that and find different places that you can recreate along the White. And then just finally, kind of wrapping up our season, we do an end of the year cleanup. Our Green Up Day is kind of the beginning of the year, and then September is our end of the year program. So that's in a few months, but just wanted to flag that we always do a big September cleanup that ends our season. So we'd love if you got involved with that as well. And so that's basically it. You can come see us at our table. We also would love if you followed us on our social media. That's where we post everything. And you can also sign up for our newsletter. So hope to hear from more of you. Thank you very much.
So last but not least is the Hartford Conservation Commission. Mike Harris.
So bring this to a full circle back to the Conservation Commission, and I know I'm the one standing in the way of the mixing and the mingling and the food, so I'll try to work through this quickly. But let me just start by telling you a little bit about the purpose of the Hartford Conservation Commission. And it was established in 1990, and according to our annual report, its purpose is to inventory the town's natural resources, maintain and preserve local natural areas, protect valuable wildlife habitat, monitor scenic areas and watersheds, educate and increase public awareness about conservation in Hartford, and to encourage recreation that's consistent with the preservation of the beauty and natural beauty of Hartford. So broadly, that's what our purpose is, but I thought I'd just tell you a little bit about what we do more on a regular basis and some of our recent accomplishments. One of our tasks is just as a consulting commission with the town to give feedback on any of the town's projects, both public and private, and how it might impact the conservation efforts of the town. But more importantly, our work really falls into three broad categories. One is the management of the 423-acre Hartford Town Forest, as well as the conservation areas in Wilder and in Quechee. And some of the recent examples of our management activities. And by the way, I'm a newer member of the board along with Chris, so I can't take any credit for any of the work that I'm going to be talking about today. That goes to a lot of other members on the Conservation Commission as well as past members. But recently we just completed producing an integrated town management forest plan. It's on our website. It's extremely thorough and really takes a long view of protecting both the town forest and other wildlife and wilderness conservation areas in the town. So that was a big accomplishment. Some of the things that we've done to implement that include working with the county forester on doing some selective timber harvest within the forest, And of course, one thing that you don't want is for people to wonder why, all of a sudden trees are missing from their town forest. So as part of that effort is to help take, walks out there with community members and educate them about sustainable forest management practices, and just make sure that people are aware of, what type of things are happening in the forest that might otherwise look like, inconsistent with some of the conservation efforts that we're trying to undertake. And then, of course, trail management is a big part of what the commission does, on an annual basis, going out and ensuring that markers and trail signs are back up after the winter, and dead trees, and maintaining the trails for both mountain bike usage and for hiking and other activities. Recently, we've been working with the Upper Valley Mountain Bike Association to take a more focus on trail maintenance in that respect, and it's brought out a lot of volunteers to the annual event last year as well. One interesting thing that we recently did that I thought was pretty interesting was to work with students at the Hartford Area Center and Technology, at the Career and Technology Center, who are in the Natural Resources class. They were brought out to work with the county forester to just learn how to operate chainsaws properly and how to assist in some of the timber harvesting and the forest management. So giving students an opportunity to learn some new skills as well within the town forest is something that we've been able to promote. And then another big area, of course, is outreach and education. And some of the recent accomplishments include working, for instance, with the Quechee Library to help implement both story walks in the town forest and scavenger hunts for kids. Of course, working with some of our partners here to do things like vernal pool walks and bird walks in the forest. And then part of what we do as well, of course, is trying to maintain a connection with other boards and other committees within Hartford and more regionally, like tonight, of course, or supporting the work of the tree board, the climate change, all the other groups within that town that sort of have a conservation mission as well. And I'll leave you, because my time is almost up, with some of our upcoming events that we have going, that will be happening one this weekend actually. We'll be having the family forest frolic on the 3rd. In April, we have both an invasive plant removal day in the town forest, as well as the salamander meander. Of course, we'll participate in Green Up Day on the 4th of May. And then in May, we also have another forest bird walk. And finally, our annual trail walk day will be scheduled in June, trail maintenance day in June. Thank you.
Well, we want to give a special thanks again to all the speakers. It was they did a wide range, and they were good, and everybody was pretty much on time, so it didn't keep us. So we have the refreshments. Oh, and I also want to give a special thanks to Matt Osborne, who is the liaison with the Hartford Conservation Commission. He did a lot of the nuts and bolts for this, and makes us volunteers look good. So thank you, Matt. So enjoy the refreshments, talk with the folks, and thank you all for coming.